If you're in this class or this session, you're here to learn more about 3D visualization and mixed reality. If you're not here for that reason, then you're not going to get much out of it, I guess. Just a show of hands, who here, I just want to get a feel of you know, who you are. Who here is maybe considered an engineer or a designer of some sort? Okay. Good number. Anyone that's in sales or sales support or anything like that? Not really any. Okay. Then we can badmouth them, I guess, if they're not here. Just kidding. Anyone here that does production or live event staging, anything like that? One over here, a couple over here. Cool. So hopefully you should all be able to get something out of this, because a lot of what we're talking about has been used in event staging as well for planning and all that sort of thing. So it's very cool. Just to let you know a little bit about myself, my name is Darren Brown. I'm from Pennsylvania. I work for New Era Technology. We used to be called Advanced AV. I've been there for about 15 years. Started out as a field technician in the integration side. Before that, I did some staging. And then from a technician, I started doing restaurant programming for about 8 years. Got certified in it, and then I kind of get a little bit ADD when it comes to my job, so I felt like after 8 years I was okay with that and wanted to move on to something else. So I started working on the sales side as a sales engineer. And while working there and helping out with proposals and bill of materials and doing site visits and that sort of thing, I started realizing there were certain situations where just providing a bill of materials, just a spreadsheet and a narrative about what we're selling, you know, our clients as far as the integrated solution is concerned, just wasn't always cutting it. And I know one of our other account managers was using SketchUp at the time and was integrating some SketchUp models into their proposal just to give the client a better idea of what we were selling them. Because many of you that have done, you know, that are engineers or designers, you know, there's so many times when we've been in front of a client doing a page turn of the drawings or documents, and the client's just like, yeah, sure, it looks good to me, and they have no idea what they're looking at. But showing them a drawing, you know, something that looks like the room that we're designing or the space that we're designing, gets them really more familiar with what we're trying to sell them, as well as what the issues that we're trying to solve for them. So it's a good way to get them excited about what we're trying to sell them. So, all right. So for the agenda today, or this afternoon, we're going to talk, first of all, about the case for 3D. We're not trying to replace two-dimensional CAD drawings or anything like that. We're trying to offer something more, do something else. And then after that, we'll prove the concept by looking at a couple of case studies, a couple of opportunities that turned into projects for us that were a result that were won as a result of using or were aided by the use of 3D design. And then we're going to go behind the curtain. I'm going to go through a walkthrough. I'm going to take a two-dimensional CAD drawing, throw it into the 3D design software, build it up into a 3D model, and then actually go into a renderer and do a VR walkthrough of that room. And then we'll do some other augmented reality examples. And if there's time, we'll do some origin stories as far as just looking at the history of VR, the history of 3D design, the history of graphic design, really, if there's time. So, and then after that, we'll have some Q&A. So, case for 3D. Now, the idea of 3D is obviously pretty rudimentary. We all learned about this concept of perspective. I remember learning it in 5th grade. You know, our teacher, who wasn't even an art teacher at the time, she was just our basic teacher who taught all subjects. She went up on the board and drew one of these. Can anyone tell me what this is? Suggestions? A point. Very good. Some people would call it a dot. But this is actually a point of origin. Actually, since you answered that, I have some free goggles and stuff, so if you want to grab this. hopefully, oh, there you go. Nice catch. Yeah, I have a whole bunch of I don't want to carry these on the plane back, so if I'm trying to get rid of them. And they all come with a QR code, so if you scan it with your phone, you can actually look at some of the models that we've done in a 360 view. But yeah, this is a point of origin, as you would call it in perspective. And after she drew that, we all drew it on a piece of paper, and then she drew this. Can you even tell me what this is? Yes. I won't throw it. It's all right. Thanks. Yes, this is the horizon. This is, I mean, if you believe in this kind of nonsense, this is where you would see the curvature of the Earth. So if you believe that the Earth has some sort of curve to it. Apparently, that's a controversial subject these days, so I want to tiptoe around that subject. After drawing the horizon, she just drew 3 lines going from the bottom up to the point, and then 3 more lines going from the bottom to the point, and then drew a bunch of rectangles. And then there you have a 3-dimensional drawing on a 2-dimensional field. And when I was 6 years old, well, not 6 years old, 6th grade, this kind of blew me away. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. It's such a simple concept because, we think, we all see in 3 dimensions, but we don't all, it's hard to transfer that onto paper. But the concept is really basic in the end. So for 3D, we're not trying to replace 2 dimensions. We're still going to have CAD drawings. We're still going to need functionals. We're still going to need to show where this box is connected to this box with a line through it. There's no need for 3D here. There's no need for 3-dimensional elevations necessarily. You can still communicate how high a display is off the finished floor. You can still communicate how far the camera is going to stick out of the wall. You don't need anything fancy for that. And then reflected ceiling plans are important. Can't do away with those. We need to see where the tiles are. We need to see where the hard cap ceiling is. We need to see where the lighting and all that sort of thing is located, as well as the floor plan. We need to know where our tables, furniture, floor boxes. It's important to see all those things. But the difference between 3D design and 2-dimensional CAD design is a lot of times the audience. Who are 2-dimensional CAD drawings for? Who's looking at them? It's usually engineers, clients, designers, GCs, whoever needs to look at them to make sure that what we're offering them is going to work or that sort of thing. Bless you. But as far as 3D models, who's the audience there? It's really going to be the end user, the person that is going to be in the space, the person that might be designing the space as well. But most importantly, the person who wants to take all this, who's asking for all this technology that's going into a room and trying to use it for their own purposes. But what are the benefits of 3D design? Well, most importantly is getting a realistic representation of the space. This is something that can make the client very excited, because just giving them a spreadsheet and a narrative that has a bunch of jargon and maybe some cut sheets of a camera or a projector can be pretty boring to read through. But if you can include some sort of a 3-dimensional drawing, something that gives them gives a sense of space within the room, it's extremely helpful. Ergonomics are another benefit. Being able to see sight lines, display size, that sort of thing. Getting a perspective from the closest viewer to the furthest viewer. Being able to see where there's obstructed views. Because you can see that on a floor plan. If there's a column in the middle of a room, you can see that, but you're not going to see the impact that column is having on the display until you see it in real 3D. Aesthetics are very important. Many times we're working with furniture designers or many clients themselves are very concerned about making sure that this big, ginormous screen in the front of the room isn't going to be so obtrusive that it's just going to ruin the look or the feel of the room, or if something else needs to be added to it. More importantly than all of these is just really communicating to the client that we get it. We understand what we're trying to design for you. We understand what you're asking of us, and here's what it's going to look like. But even better than that, we can tell them we have a vision. We want to go on a journey with the client. We want to say, we understand that you have a limited budget. We understand that you're asked to do these specific things, but maybe there's some other options. And we can actually render those options. We can make models of those options for relatively little cost. And to be able to do that and to show a client, like, you're asking for one display, but hey, there's a case for maybe putting 2 or 3 displays on the side of the room for better viewage. And we can show them what it looks like, and you know, obviously with the price attached to it. But we can travel through this, or even just show them different stages of how this room's going to look. Maybe they'll start out with one thing and then add other phases later on. But more importantly than all of this is it saves time. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but a rendering can be worth about 30 emails, 5 conference calls, and maybe 2 site visits. And if you're laughing, you don't know what I'm saying. You're probably a PM or you've done this before. So yeah, it saves time. I mean, just being able to, and we'll look at we'll see that through some of the examples that I have where this really helped with communicating to the client a lot of information. So you might be saying, well, this is great. We haven't really started using 3D renderings, but what can I do, or where can we start? There's a lot of options out there, so I can't really tout one specific because I only use, basically, I've tried others, but I primarily use one 3D rendering software, which is SketchUp. I use SketchUp because it's really easy to learn. They teach it in grade school and middle school. My kids have taken a design class before and have actually 3D printed toys and that sort of thing within their class. So it's really easy to get started. You can actually download a free version of the software that's almost fully capable. You just can't add extensions and that sort of thing to it. But at the same time, SketchUp also has the ability to do BIM management, do all kinds of great, really sophisticated stuff as far as design is concerned. Revit, many of you may use Revit. It has the capabilities of doing 3D as well. And in fact, a lot of the same plugins that do rendering add-ons for SketchUp they're also offered for Revit. 3ds Max works with Revit as well and can do animation and that sort of thing. The rest of these examples can be used as far as AV design is concerned, but are primarily used by visual effects and that sort of thing, which they do really amazing stuff, but may not be 100% applicable here. But these are options as well. Fusion 360. This is if you're used to using AutoCAD. Fusion 360 is a good segue. It's still it can be very difficult to learn, but can work in the whole AutoCAD environment. Blender is another free software. In fact, some CGI and visual effects artists use Blender, at least to start a lot of their models as sort of a foundation for many of the models that they use. Mojo is similar to Blender. SolidWorks is probably the most expensive and maybe the most complicated. You almost need a degree in order to learn how to use SolidWorks, but it's still available if you want to use it. I just want to throw this in to take a break. Does anyone have any questions so far? I started rattling off a lot of this stuff. What's that? Are we getting a copy of the presentation? I believe so, yeah. In fact, I think it was included in some of the submittal documents. Yes, sir.
So, grabbed my attention, there were Fusion 360, so I assume you've used that?
I've played with it, not much though, so I don't know.
Like, you're working on a 2D design and you can just integrate it in and say, click here and you get 3D, or is it
It'd be cool if it was that simple. It was difficult for me to figure out. I played a little bit more with 3ds Max, but Fusion 360, I was given some 3D drawings that were created in Fusion, and it's mostly a line drawing type of 3D. It doesn't show necessarily the planes, but you can add that in different plugins and that sort of thing, so you can make it a little bit more realistic. Yeah. Good question. All right. So case studies. I'm going to go through a couple of these, and if you want, you can scan that QR code on there, and it'll immediately download, or not download, but it'll open up a browser page with a 3D rendering of the room that we're talking about. This particular space was an existing meeting space, and to note, it was located in, or is located in, Berlin, Germany. And I'll go back to that in a minute. It was a unique space. It had a relatively low ceiling, cut even lower by the soffit around the middle. It had a weird high vac system in the middle of the room. And then below that was this very large lighting system that just kind of snaked around the room. And with all those limitations in the ceiling, there was a lot of display size limitations. And communicating that to the client, and we've worked with this client many times before, but they were having a difficult time understanding that, if you have a low ceiling, you're going to have a smaller image because you can only make it so high. So showing them these renderings and offering different solutions, different display solutions, was very vital in this particular job. In fact, once we sent these renderings with our proposal, they got really excited and signed off within 24 hours of this project. They didn't need to deliberate too much. There was a little bit back and forth after we won the project, and the PM noted that many of the people on site at this location, their English was better than our German, but not that great. And so there was a lot of communication issues, especially in the emails. And so having them see these renderings and showing them to them answered so many questions and so many miscommunications. And they said it was extremely helpful. So again, we're communicating complex concepts visually. And we all have different ways that we learn or remember, but most people can remember stuff visually than they can reading it, or at least conceptualize stuff better visually. For that drawing? I can't say in the number of hours, but maybe a couple of days. Because I don't do the renderings full time. I'm still a sales engineer, so I'm still kind of going back and forth between roles. So a lot of times stuff will take me could take a week to design because I'm kind of hitting it a few hours here, a few hours there, and that sort of thing. But great question. We've been trying to do that in different ways. I've actually talked to some architects and structural engineers, not engineers, but construction consultants that use SketchUp. They've been doing all these renderings and the VR that I'm going to show you in the field of architecture. They've been using this for years. So they're a lot further ahead than we are in AV. I haven't really seen a lot of people using this. Some are, but not a lot. And they basically this is included in their admin costs. This is just a part of the design process for them as far as creating renderings. They do all the layouts and that sort of thing. This is just an add-on to that. So they don't necessarily bill specifically for it. It's really just included in the cost. And sometimes it's, we've done this as sort of a courtesy to a number of our clients, just to show them what we're capable of doing. And we're at the point now where we're trying to start billing it. And it's met with some success. It's easy to get a client excited about this kind of stuff until you put a price tag specifically on it. So a lot of times it's better to kind of not necessarily hide it, but just include it in the cost and just say, hey, we're including this. The price is a little bit more than it used to be, but you're getting all this other stuff out of it. So that's kind of where we're doing with it. Yeah, as far as technology is concerned, yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's not a huge part of the of the final bill. Yeah. But it's just a matter of figuring it out, really. And you know, and to boot, we're not just adding value to the client, we're adding value to ourselves, because we're saving ourselves a lot of time and headaches and that sort of thing as well by doing these. The next one is the case study is for an esports room. This is for a university that started their own esports team, and I guess for their athletes, they wanted to create a practice space, including a video wall. So there were a couple other challengers, a couple other competitors vying for this. It wasn't necessarily a bid, but it was an offering for this project, and we included the renderings as a part of our submittal for this, and they really helped a lot in allowing the client to really understand. Like I said before, we get it. We understand what you're trying to do. Now there were other caveats with building a video wall like this, especially for gamers. That's different than building a video wall for any other kind of content, and which actually proved to be really kind of challenging as far as finding a viable solution. But as far as the use of it and the design of it, the client understood that we knew what we were trying to do with it. So it's another good example of that. This is a plain old executive conference room. Until you look further into this picture, or if you download the 360 drawings, there's something different about this one. And if you notice in the table, there's some displays located in the privacy panels. The client specified that they wanted it to look like this. They wanted and it's kind of a new thing is adding displays to the system other than the one that's up in front. A lot of people think it's more engaging to have displays across from each other so you can look at the other person and look at the content without having to turn your head. And this client, wanted to do this, and we weren't too sure about it, so we tried to prove to ourselves and to them that this would be a good solution, partly because of the sight lines. And if you see the 3D renderings that you're going to download, there's, I placed the viewpoint from different seats around the table, backed a little bit farther away from the seat, as if someone's leaning back, just so we can see if it's possible to make sure, as long as we can make sure that the person can see the entire display across from them on the panel, because the table would easily get in the way of that. And through this design process, we found that, in fact, you couldn't be sitting way back in the chair, but it was possible for everyone to see most of the displays across from them. So again, this is another example of us kind of, confirming with the client, but also confirming with ourselves that this is a viable solution. So I'm going to go through a design walkthrough with you. Does anyone have any questions so far, at least about what we've talked about? Yes.
I'm kind of curious, how often do you say it happens that in the process of doing these 3D renderings that engineers catch little details that they wouldn't have caught if they hadn't gone through that rendering process?
It's a good question. It happens occasionally. We actually did. We did a rendering of a podium, a lectern. In fact, I'll show it to you later. One of our examples where I rendered this lectern not for a client, but for our drafters, basically because it included a display on a mount, articulating mount. That's what I'm trying to say. It included a display on an articulating mount, and we weren't sure if it was going to be too big and it was going to cover up most of the lectern and stuff. So that was part of the reason we did it for ourselves. So there are times when we're trying to answer our own questions by doing these. And yeah, occasionally it can be very helpful. So any other questions? Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of cheated on that one. That was actually, I took a rendering. In fact, I did that because we have a digital signage designer. And he was asking me if we can make renderings that show the actual video content of the displays on them. And at the time, I thought, well, you can't do that with SketchUp or the rendering. But I thought about it a little bit more. I thought, well, if I put this into something like After Effects, some sort of video editing software, you could actually, overlap the video on top of the rendering and kind of crop it a little bit to make it look like it's supposed to be in there. So I kind of used some other software and make that happen. Any other questions? All right. It's going to take a second to set up here. Maybe not. Alrighty. Okay, so we're going to start with SketchUp. As it starts to thunder and rain, must be the afternoon. So yeah, so every SketchUp's kind of cool. Every version of SketchUp that they make, they always add another. They add a different one of their employees as a model in their design. So, and I think this guy's name is Chris. I forget what this guy's name is. Oh, it's Mark. Yeah. So, anyway, sorry, Mark, but we're gonna have to delete you. So essentially, there's different layouts, and for SketchUp, you start out with the XYZ axis here, just to give you an idea of what you're looking at. And we're going to build a room. It's going to be a very small, simple conference room. And I'm just going to start with a CAD drawing. Now, you can import CAD into SketchUp. However, for time's sake, and also kind of for real application's sake, I'm just going to use a photograph of a PDF of a layout, which is going to look not great, but it's going to show you what you can do with very little. Components here. It's a PNG file. All right. So we can do the high resolution one here. Now in here we can simply change the type. I'm not doing a texture. I'm doing an image here. Now part of this example is not to teach you how to do this necessarily, just to show you how it's relatively easy. So we're just going to drag this and make this a certain size. Now, this is just an image, and there are dimensions on here, but how do we know that the image I put into this model is to scale? Well, we can measure it first. So you get our little tape measure tool here. I'm going to measure this 6-foot distance because it says it's 6 foot, so I'm going to assume that's correct. So I'm going to start here and go over to here, and on the bottom right here, it's going to show me the length when I go to here, and it's saying it's 5 foot 10 inches is actually pretty close. I've never been that close before. But I want to make it exactly 6, so what I can do is I can click on the line here, manually type 6 feet, hit enter, and it's going to ask me if I want to resize the model. That's the reason I deleted Mark from here, because it's going to resize him or anything that's in this model. So you always have to do this first. So if I say yes, it's going to slightly alter it. So if I remeasure this, it's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's going to be a little bit better. So yeah, it's about 6 feet. So now I know that this floor plan is to scale. And I'm going to take the square tool, and we're going to start at one corner. Use my fancy 3D mouse here to draw it over to here. Okay, so we just made a block. Again, for time's sake, I'm not going to be at 100% accurate on here. It's going to be very close. And if I want to make these walls dimensional, so there's the offset tool can make this field a little bit bigger, create new lines. So we now have most of the space here. Delete this. There's also a little shroud type closet area to cover up this pillar. So I'm going to draw a line around there. And the front of the room is actually not a regular wall. There's a door, which I'm going to make a little bit offset from here. It goes about to here. and then it goes out to this wall. And when I delete these lines, you'll see underneath that this wall right here is pretty thin, and I'm going to assume, and I know because I've been in this space, that this is actually a glass wall right here. So in just starting out with just these few lines, and knowing personally, knowing the ceiling height of this room, I do use the pull-up tool, and I can type in the specific dimensions. Say it's 9.5 feet. All right, yeah. So the walls are now 9.5 feet tall. So we have 3.5 walls, and we can add to it by importing. Now you can import, like you can see here, PNG files. You can do 3DS, all kinds of other 3D models from other software that you can output. You can import into here, AutoCAD drawings, that sort of thing. We're just going to do some SketchUp files that I've already set up for this, and we're going to start out with the glass door. I'm just going to drag that into place over here. SketchUp does a lot of snapping, so you'll see objects snap into certain corners and lines. So we're going to put this right here, drag it out. So we have the door in place. Now I know, because I've used this door before, that's pretty much the standard specs as far as the door size is concerned. Now I'm going to add a wall panel. That's not going to be perfect fit. Snap to the right place there. So as you can see, the wall is a little bit taller than the door. I want to match it to the door height, and I also want to make it wide enough to fit this space. So there's a scale tool here that allows me to drag it over to make it the right width. And you can, it took me a while to realize this. I've been working with SketchUp for about 6 years, and it took maybe 2 years to figure out how it's, when you're resizing something, you can easily snap it to other objects, which is very helpful. So if I click the scale tool here, I can just drag over to the door and make it the same height there. Now the top is open here, so I'm just going to make a line here. Again, it's a little bit of a gap here, but I'm not too worried about it. So I'm going to use the pull tool again. Oops. To complete that. Right there, oops. There we go. So now we have our 4 walls. We just need a floor and some technology. So I'm going to add a floor there. And we're going to add the materials in a little bit. Actually, one thing I want to do with the door is I want to open it. Because when we do the VR walkthrough, we can't walk through this door. So drag it out here. Swing it open, and then reposition it. All right. Not there. Okay, drag it over here. That's close enough. All right. Also want to complete the floor along here. Now right now I'm pretty much done with this drawing, so I'm going to delete it because it gets really weird looking when you do the rendering of it, because it keeps flickering in and out of the space. So we know how big this space needs to be. And I'm going to add some materials over here. These are different trays for different tools. And I'm going to go with carpet. There's a number of options here. You can always download. These are essentially just JPEG files that you can download to create different materials. I'm going to do this dark suede because it renders relatively well. And it looks kind of like a typical, office building carpet. All right, so for furniture and technology, I'm going to import another picture to show us where all that stuff is supposed to be located, which is in the low-res floor plan that I have here. So I'm going to throw this over the top of here, and I don't know if this is the right size, but at least it's close. Relatively close. I can scale it up a little bit if I wanted to, but at least now we know kind of where the center of the table is located. So now I'm going to import the furniture. Go back to SketchUp drawings. And where's my Aussie table? This is not a pretty table, but it's going to work. You could always change the material or modify it if you want. Now these are all components. You can see it's got the blue lines around it. It's kind of it's like a block, essentially. You can click into it and modify it however you want. I'm gonna actually, because, well, I'll change it later. This is actually, it's hard to tell now until I put the chairs in, but it's a relatively tall table, so I'll have to shrink it down a little bit after I put the chairs in. It's also a little bit short for as far as length is concerned. So I will make it longer right there. And then the rest of this should go relatively quickly. I'm gonna add the chairs off this chair. Takes a second. Put one there, copy and paste. We'll do one more. And then to save time, we can select them all and right-click and create a group of them. And then again, copy and paste. Rotate them, slide them in. And there we go. And like I was saying, the table's a little tall. So scaling it is very helpful in this case. And I'm just going to eyeball it and making sure that arms don't bump the table. That's pretty close. Again, it's not the prettiest table, but it works for what we're doing here. All right, so we have furniture, we need technology. I'm going to delete this picture real quick so it's not in the way. I want to put a display here, but it's not in my component list. I don't have a model of a display, so what's kind of cool about SketchUp is they have a 3D warehouse. It's essentially an online community where people can upload and share their models that they've made. I've uploaded a number of them that are more AV-centric. Some of them are just windows and stuff that were useful, but you can really just upload whatever you want. I already typed it in here, so I was going to type in 55-inch LED, but it's already in here. Just obviously you can see there's tons of displays that other people have made. I know some of these are great, some of these are not. It's not saying the brand is great. It's just the design of them might be simple. Some of these just use a JPEG image of the front of one, and when you import it into a model, it doesn't look all that super great. This one in particular, I've used, in practicing this model before, so I know this 55-inch works, especially because it has sort of a vanilla spreadsheet on the display. You can easily change that. It's really just again, it's just a JPEG, so you can open up the component and replace the material with something else. And so again, I'm going to eyeball the location of it for now. And I want this to be centered with the table, obviously. If any good AV designer would want to do that. So we make a little line where this light blue dot, was after I clicked on it, is essentially shows you the center of each field or plane. So I just drew this line that's in the middle of the wall, which I know that the table is lined up with the middle of the wall. So I just want to make sure that the display is doing the same thing. Again, for time's sake, I'm not going to get too into centering stuff. It looks a little low. We can measure. Pretty easy way to measure is just using this tape measure. Click here, click on the bottom here. This is saying 3 feet, 40-some inches. It's good enough for now. Well, we need a source for this display, so I'm going to add a pathway to the source, which would be some sort of cable cubby or cable box, which again I have set up here. Not necessarily brand specific, but it is. Again, I can't just put it anywhere in here. It's going to be centered. So if I find the center line on the side here, I can draw a line across and then find the center of the other line if I move this over. Now I know where the center of the table is. I'm going to eyeball this a little bit better. And if you see on one side, I'm not sure why it's doing this, but on one side it deleted the tabletop material, so you could actually see through it. The other side it did not. It does this occasionally, and I think if I click out of it, no, it doesn't. Never mind. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about it right now. I'm just going to slide it over. Oops, not that. I'm going to slide this over. So, the cable cubby. And we need an actual source. That's not the source. That's just the connector for it. We're going to import a laptop. Make it look like someone's working on it. So we just do it at an angle here. Slide over. We could create a cable going out to it. I'm not going to do that right now. So basically we have our technology in this room, and I want to create an outside portion of the room. So I'm just going to make a wall here. Come on. Sometimes lining these up isn't. There we go. All right, let's do it this way. And do our fourth wall right here. As you can see, it automatically, whenever it completes a field or the perimeter of a field, it automatically loads in whatever plane needs to be there. So we're going to add a roof for that. Okay. One thing we're kind of missing in here, now that it's all boxed in, is we don't have any lighting. So I'm just going to add a light fixture to the ceiling real quick. Oop, a little bit too much. And just to make sure it's bright enough, we'll just double it up. Line that up there. Okay, oops, there we go. Now I'm just going to add materials to the walls. And this, you can, and I'll show you that in a minute. Right now, the material of the table right here, you can just change by. Right here, there's a bunch of different woods that come here. You can add different patterns and that sort of thing. But the sheen of it, which comes out in the rendering plugin that I'm using, can be changed in that software or in the plugin itself. Oops. Just make everything white. There. Pretty much, yeah. This is just I try not to use a white, I just kind of use an off-white color, just because it looks a little bit more natural. And then do the ceiling. And the area outside of the room is not lit up as well, but to make a simple light, that's going to show up in the renderer, I can just create a rectangle in here. And before I do that, I'm going to use the same material we're using for the lights within this lighting fixture, and apply it to there. It's hard to see if I actually did that. Nope, I didn't. Use the eyedropper. Yeah, that is the same color, isn't it? What do I use for this? Oh. Different color. Okay. Check something here. Okay, gotcha. All right, so those are two different colors. Okay. Now, I'm going to set some of this up before I open up the renderer software. and that is the materials. Whatever color is selected on the eyedropper here is going to be the color that we're changing right now. So if I click on this one, it's M1. I'm going to make it self-illuminate, so it's going to be its own light. And that should go for this material in here. Right. But not that one. Okay, just making sure that all the walls don't light up. Okay. Now, some of the materials, like the windows and stuff, they'll automatically render whatever material they are. You can change it later on. But what I'm going to do now is change our output here, because I want you to see the rendered version. Should come up in a second here. Any questions right now while we're waiting? Actually, yeah, this is actually an extension or a plugin for SketchUp called Enscape. They make it for Revit as well. They take all the properties all the stuff that you use in SketchUp and just kind of create their own lighting effects and material effects and that sort of thing. So right now we have a room that's relatively well lit. I'm going to go ahead and, since it is well lit, we're going to make some changes later. I'm going to add the Oculus. This has an Oculus. The main reason we're using this render is not all of them have a VR element to it. But if you just click on the Oculus part, you can actually pretty much immerse yourself in the room. If you can see these, there we go. All right. Get rid of our grid. All right, so we have a tool here. I'm a little bit up in the sky, so I'm going to change to a walk mode. That way, it's not tracking 100% here. Hold on one second. All right, sometimes it takes a second to catch up. All right, so we're in the room. We can see that the glass has some sort of reflective property in it, which is pretty basic. We can change that later on. The metal is a little bit shiny, maybe too shiny. If we go into the room, oops, I'm still in fly mode. Yep. Got a little too close to the floor there. Start here. Let's go to fly, back to here. Okay, now we're good. Nope, we're not. I'm just going to stay in fly mode for now. All right, so we can see we have the table, we have the chairs. We can go in and look close up on them. There's a little bit of a sheen to it, but it's not, yeah. But all that stuff we can change. But basically we can literally do a walkthrough of this room. I really want walk mode to work right now. Doesn't want to move, doesn't want to. We don't want to walk today. But if you normally use walk mode, all the obstructions will be real. You would stop moving. So right now I'm just using the joystick on the controller to move around. And it also gives me the menu here. One really cool thing that you can do here, and actually I might do that after I change. Well, anyway, going through this room, you can see that the table doesn't have quite the sheen I want it to, and I want the display to look like it has some brightness to it. So I can basically go back into SketchUp and modify. You can't see what I'm doing, but I'll change it real quick. As you saw before, I just used the eyedropper to select the material, and then I can change the properties of it. So I can make the table a little bit more shiny, or I can make it real shiny. Right there. And you can make things look more or less metallic. Yeah. Let me sync this up real quick. I'll move that in a second. And I just want to change one more thing here. so we can all see what's going on here. It's a little too bright, so I can make the display have its own luminance. Obviously, it's not going to be, all this stuff is not going to be 100% represented in real life, but it's going to give you an idea what everything's going to look like. A lot of times I import, and you see that on some of the picture examples that I had set up there, is there's a font size comparison on the displays. And I do that not because it's going to be 100% accurate, but it's going to be pretty close. One cool tool that there is in this rendering software is it has a camera mode where you can do a screen capture or you can do a rendered image. And what it does is it shows you a little preview of the picture that you want to take. It's in black and white. If you just hit the trigger, it'll just take a snapshot of that. You want to just see the display in the laptop, you can just do something like that. And then once you close out of the app itself, it'll create those rendered images. What I want to do real quick, we have time here, is show you a little bit more complicated model that we can walk through. I'm just going to open it up. I don't want to save this. It's garbage. I'm going to open up. Quick little demo here. Just so you get an idea of a more complete room. It's loading. All right, but I want to start out. This loads. Inside the space here. This is just another multi-purpose room that we've designed. Yes?
Kind of new to how you're going about this. So I've seen videos of three-dimensional stuff,
Mm-hmm.
promotion for whatever, architecture or whatever. So at this point, you did a 3D rendering or a 3D drawing.
Right.
And you have to use the virtual reality here to actually do the rendering?
You don't have to. Actually, good question. I went right into it, but I can show you where you can just have this view on your laptop and use your mouse to move around in the space. Let me turn the sync back on. But I'm just using, oops. You can also set up presets.
So the rendering part is actually giving it a virtual curve.
Right. Just,
Of actually walking through.
as far as the VR is concerned, yeah.
It's giving that,
Yeah, you get the 3D.
drawing that ability
Right.
in the rendering.
Yeah,
And
right.
if you did do you export it to a video for actually the customer to see it, or how do they see it?
You can, and I can show you that in a second. That's another cool feature of this particular plugin, is you can actually make a video file.
Or would they just click on the rendering and they would get that anyhow?
They can do that as well. You can just do that manually, and like I was taking the snapshots earlier, you can just send those pictures of the room, and you can kind of go through and customize what angles you want to use or however you want to set it up, and as far as that's concerned. So yeah, you can just use a basic, this is still turned on. You don't have to necessarily use the VR in this space. To show you kind of what this plugin can do as far as rendering capabilities. Let's see if walk mode's working now. Yeah, it's actively, it's depending on this, the speed. You can see around the edges there might be a little bit of a pixelation, and that's just the graphics card trying to catch up to the movements and that sort of thing. But when you add, it's interesting, when you add any kind of grass material, it actually renders the blades of grass in here, which is kind of a cool feature. As well as, This controller is kind of messing me up here. Go back to walk mode. For some reason I can't turn around. All right, and you can see the foliage has a certain sheen. You can give it plant properties and that sort of thing, so a little bit of a shine to it. You can see the windows have some sort of reflective properties, and you can adjust that as needed in the software as well. For some reason, it's not. Oh, this is another cool feature: is the time. You can pretty much make it anytime you want. You can change the sky. You can have a sunset. Where is it? Over here somewhere. And it can be nighttime if you really wanted to. And it's really dark. Not too much street lights around here. Another cool thing is, oh yeah, another navigation. I think I need to just turn this off. There we go. All right, I'm gonna have to turn around. If I point the wand and just click the trigger, you can just warp to wherever you want to go. You can go back inside. What I was about to show you is this, some of the effects that you can do in here. I don't know if I would ever use it, but it's kind of cool. You can add outlines, so you kind of have a comic book feel to it. There's also a white mode. They have other modes in the rendering, not necessarily in the VR aspect of it, but you can do a white mode where you just have a black and white image of everything. Yeah, so, and I've seen these actually in some architecture drawings where they'll do renderings that are just black and white drawings, just show an example of each room, just as sort of like a preview. So basically that's taking a CAD drawing, like if you remember way back then, we had essentially a JPEG image or a PNG image of a floor plan and built it into a room and went into VR. So it's not impossible to do this. The technology's out there. It's relatively, once you get set up and get used to using the software, it's relatively easy. There's one more software I want to show you. Let me get back into it. Yes.
You know if it'll work with HoloLens?
Actually, I'm going to show you something that does work with HoloLens, which is pretty cool. I don't have one, but I've tried it out in HoloLens, and it's really cool. But you can also use it on your phone. All right, let me go back to here. All right, yeah, back to, all right, yeah, all right. So SketchUp makes their own viewer app. And which one do I want? I want to use this. And you use on iPhone, Android, whatever you have. And it's great for if you have a model or anything like that and you want to show it to a client. It won't necessarily be the rendered image that you created, but at least it's the 3D model that you created. But they have an even cooler aspect of their app, which, like right here, these are just models that I've uploaded. These are displays, different things here. Where is it? There's no preview for it. But they have, if you see on the app here, once I select it, I want to make sure I have enough room here. Once you select the model and it loads up, there's different tools here, but there's an AR on the left side. You can see an AR button. I want to dismiss that. All right, is it loading? Okay. So we just scan the area that we want to place the object in. Takes a minute for it to load. By the way, this is the podium I was telling you about before that we needed for, our drafters were asking for. So we can place it on the stage here. And now we have a lectern on the stage. And we can swivel it around. And tracking is pretty good. Sometimes it gets a little bit off where it drifts a little bit. But you can basically, if you have a client that wants to know how big this lectern is going to look on the stage, you can show them. And you can add or take away layers. There's a microphone on this one and a monitor. These are all in the thing, so you can now see. Yeah. Yeah, so this is a model that was created in SketchUp in the regular software and just uploaded to the app. It's called SketchUp Viewer. The app is free. The AR element to it, it costs $10. I think you have to pay it once a year or something like that, so it's not too bad. And while you have it here, there's also, actually I'll show you can, there's a measuring tool. It's a little hard to figure out, but you can measure how. SketchUp Viewer. Yep. All right. Another cool thing that this does is when you download the app, it gives you a default model of this dance center. And it's kind of a complicated, it's the whole building. So it takes a minute to load. But if we do the AR of it, scan the floor again. You can scan this onto a table if you want to. That's going to take a few seconds for it to load. This is the model that I saw using Oculus, because I went to SketchUp Camp last year. And the Oculus version of this was really cool because you'll see in the model here, there's a lot of flickering, because it's a very intricate model. The windows have these vertical or these diagonal lines in it, and they kind of flicker a little bit on the app here. But in the Oculus, it literally looked like you were standing in front of the model, and you could just look around it and take different layers off of it. It's, yeah, basically, because it doesn't necessarily, there might be a way to save them onto the app where they don't have to load as much, but you do have to, when you do the AR mode, it does have to load it into the AR aspect of it. So we have this, and they have a lot of layers attached to it, so let's take some of them off so it doesn't look so complicated here, the site. And I want to look through the roof. So you can take the roof layer off, and we have this model of this building right in front of us. Now there's another button on here that looks like a guy dropping into a box on the left-hand corner. It's a drop-in mode. And you tap on the model, it basically scales it full size. So now we're actually inside the dance studio. You can use your finger to move around a little bit. We can go down the stairs. A little kludgy here. There we go. And we can see this little girl getting ready for a recital or something. So basically, we can move around in the space itself. Now again, if you can imagine an Oculus, this would be a lot cooler, but it's still pretty cool just using the phone app. So it's another way we can get immersive with our designs. We don't have to build these designs. We can just make virtual versions of them. So there we go. All right, doing good for time. Any other questions? Yes. Can you base a 3D environment based off of 3D? Oh, like take the 360 pictures and build it. You could. It'd be a little difficult because those 360 photos, essentially how they're laid out is all curved around and that sort of thing. You'd want to use, two-dimensional.
For that Autodesk recap, that's what that does. It'll take in multiple pictures or 360 pictures and generate a 3D model for you.
Really?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. With scale, and then you can add more objects to it. It's a really, really cool piece of software.
All right. Well, there you go. That's in CAD, in AutoCAD?
Well, it's part of the Autodesk package. It's part of the Inventor
Gotcha.
and Fusion library.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, so I'm not too familiar with it, so that's good to know. Any other questions? We're basically at the end of this, and we could go further. Actually, I do want to mention one quick thing. This is slide 15. Just want to go over a couple of ways that VR and 3D design is impacting our industry as far as AV is concerned. And many of you have probably run into this already, but there's virtual video conferencing. This company called WorldViz. There's a couple others that do it as well. But essentially, you can create an environment. In fact, you can use SketchUp or any of the other ones, Fusion 360, to create a room and import it into into WorldViz's software and design your own meeting based off of a room, based off of that 3D rendering. They also have their own that it comes with as well. Yeah, basically you can create your own avatars in the environment, and whoever has, and you can do it on a regular desktop as well, but if you have VR, you can actually go into the rooms. You can share documents by literally handing them to each other. You can import a presentation or a PDF and have it set up as a viewable file within the software. Sorry, I'll have to maximize this. The example that they show here, and this is going to take too long to load. It's probably easier to show. These examples right here just shows 3D models that they imported into the software and were able to look around and manipulate. But again, you have to create your own content for this, but it's still pretty cool that you can virtually meet with other people in whatever environment you want. So that's one thing that's coming down. That's becoming to be a thing. And then as far as VR domes and VR rooms, the picture on the top here is it's a rendering, basically, because I don't think we've finished making it yet. But one of our clients wanted to have a VR room where they requested a 170-degree display or screen with projection, and wanted to be able to have give their clients a VR experience. They had their own content set up, and they could just do the Oculus, or they could have the client just view it on the screen and just showing them examples of their product or whatever service they were offering, that sort of thing. So that's another opportunity for integrators to create something that VR is offering. It can be an offer for us as integrators. And then the domes as well, a lot of them are portable. Many have used this for staging. There's sometimes conferences and that sort of thing, or any situation where someone needs to have some sort of VR projection mapping. We saw it at an event earlier this week where they had sort of some sort of a tour type thing where you can go inside and see all around you and that sort of thing. So another opportunity for us. And then for tours and walkthroughs, some of you may have seen this, but it's a company called Matterport. They create VR or 360-degree cameras that you can go and set up in different locations. A lot of realtors use this, so if you go on the realtor website, a lot of times they do virtual tours this way. Apologies. Yeah, Matterport. This might take a minute. But basically, you can, even just on a regular desktop or on your phone, you can, once this loads, you can scroll through and look at a 3D rendering. But this is a great example. If you are an integrator, or even if you're in staging, you can create these 360 photos and put them on your website. This could be one of your latest installs or one of your latest integrations, and you can promote it. Instead of just taking regular two-dimensional pictures, you can actually have a virtual walkthrough of a space that you guys created. Another way that we can use VR. So this isn't going to, no, I'm going to wait for it. So.